The Everyday Adventures of Molly and Dyslexia, which is a book series inspired by the author's own journey with dyslexia. It dives into some really deep topics that I find extremely important for the intended audience of the book, which I figure is around 4 to 8 years of age. Molly Tells the World, which is a book about dyslexia and self esteem. Molly's Great Discovery, a book about dyslexia and self advocacy. And Molly Finds a Way, a book about dyslexia and personal strengths, are all fantastic reads. You can find the link to purchase these books in the description below. So I'm super, super excited to introduce the author of these three books, a very talented author, Krista Weltner, to the show. Good morning, Krista. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on. I know we've been in contact about a year ago, and then we linked back up. But this is one that I'm super, super excited to talk to you about and kind of share your story with our listeners and give some encouragement for those that are starting to give up. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, before obviously, I would love and your audience to hear about your books and things like that. But before we get into that, I kind of want to hear your story, your strengths, your struggles as a young learner in school, kind of where you grew up and things like that. So if you're willing to share share with us, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. So I'm from Ohio originally, but I've kind of lived all over since leaving my hometown. But I was in the same school system from, when I was a kid that whole time. And I had an amazing school, an amazing support system. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 7. And so I received early intervention and all the support that I could have needed. And I also was fortunate enough to come from a family with a teacher. My mother was an art teacher, and so she worked with me outside of school, independently to help get me to where I needed to be in terms of like reading and spelling. But she also really supported my creative talents and creativity and artistic pursuit were things that were really valued in the home I grew up in. So I've always been around that stuff. She really provided a lot of opportunity for that in our home, and I think that's where my artist life really started. Um, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold.
You're
But
fine. We all
I
are.
even from a young age, I was making things and creating, and I had that creative bug to just create. And I would like, for some examples, I used to, I still sew, but I began uh, sewing little costumes for like my stuffed animals, and I would make my own dollhouse furniture. And I think there's something really interesting about the line of work I ended up in, which is animation, theme park industry, puppetry, and publishing, storytelling. Like I've kind of gravitated around all of these mediums. But when I was a kid, I think that's reflected in what I would do, which would be like I would make these things and set the scene, but then not play with it. Like I would set up the dollhouse and like arrange everything and like decorate, but then not. But then once it was set, then that was my play. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit about my childhood. But yeah, I received services through elementary school, and then I went through a whole period in junior high, high school where I really disliked this part of myself and I rejected it a lot. And I remember at junior high level, I think I was given the opportunity to get retested in order to potentially receive services. And I think my mom gave me the choice because I was doing okay. She gave me the choice about whether I wanted to do that. And I didn't want to. I said no because I was so concerned with being different. And then later on, that really came back and got me. In college, I was pursuing theater at the time, and I was kind of running into some roadblocks. And so I had to get retested at that level and had services through part of college, and actually went on and got a master's degree too. So I have always loved learning despite my challenges. And I've always had that pursuit of knowledge bug.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool and kind of similar to your story. When I got in high school, I didn't get the services. My high school didn't offer it.
Mm,
And like you, I kind of floundered. Just floated above water where I was making it and doing okay. But
mm,
deep down, I knew like I was struggling. And in college, I did not go back and get retested. But because I played a sport, I always had that tutoring opportunity, which really, really helped me to get through the whole college experience. Um, but then my master's program came and it was all tough. So, like you know, I received wonderful services as a young child in elementary school, and middle school, and then when high school came, I kind of was like, "Oh gosh, I really needed those services. I didn't realize how much I needed them." Um,
Right.
but I really love the part of your story where you know you kind of credit your mom in terms of finding your passion. A lot of times, you know, learners like us, we need to have that passion. We need to find our calling. And for you, your mother being the art teacher, motivating you behind it all, and encouraging you and believing in you and your artwork is was probably huge for you. If you could speak a little bit more on that in terms of like how that kept you going in times of difficulty in school, I think that'd be awesome.
Sure. I think, yeah, I think it, how did it keep me going? I mean, I think that if you pursue these kind of paths, you are usually, especially at the college level, you are met with this attitude of, hey, this is going to be really hard. Not a lot of people make it in this, and if you can do anything else possibly, please go do it. If you can be an accountant, if you can manage to be a lawyer, if you can manage to do that, like, please go do it. And I agree with that attitude because I think you do have to have a lot of resilience and perseverance. And I think that I got a lot of that from my parents. And they, they really, I think that they were concerned with the spelling and reading and writing and like the struggles I was having. So they were helping me there. But then there was so much being put on building my self-esteem. But I don't think that they knew they were doing that. I think they were just supporting
Right.
that. And my mom always had this thing where she wanted me and my brother to at least do one thing, like a sport, or like she wanted us to have one extracurricular. And for a long while, mine was ballet and dance. And then later on, I went into I started doing theater in high school and kind of some other things. But she had this notion that she wanted us to have some kind of occupation outside of school. And I
Right.
think for someone with a learning challenge, that's just vital.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, at our school, we talk about, you know, building the whole child, not just the student.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, like you said, that especially a child that struggles, you know, in school, is having difficulty in school, to have an outlet, to have something that they enjoy doing, or something that they can get their mind off of. Oh, geez, I got a test coming up, or oh man, I got a big project coming up, and just something where they can kind of relax and put their feet up and say, "Wow, I'm really enjoying doing this. I'm really good at it." I think is another plus. Finding something that you're good at and you love doing, whether it's theater for you, sports for me, anything outside is important.
What
Outside of
sport,
school is important.
what sport did you play?
So I played football in college, but growing up, I played football, baseball, basketball. So I
Nice.
was a very busy child. I have three siblings. They all played sports, so my parents were in and out of the house, driving us to various different locations. But you know, without sports, you know, I mentioned this in my other podcast. I don't know where I would be. I hated going to school. I
Mm,
disliked it with a passion. It wasn't that I was bullied or nothing like that. It was just I just didn't like feeling different. Like
yeah.
you had mentioned earlier. I just I never liked getting pulled out of class to go to, you know, a resource room or the extra help room. I just I hated that feeling because on the sports field, I was a total opposite. You know, I was the pitcher, the shortstop, the running back, and I had, you know, it was totally different feeling for me. But without the struggle in school, I don't think I would have been as successful in sports. It gave me that drive to, you know, get back up. You know, it's okay if I fail this, you know, on first down. I still got second, third, and fourth down. If I lost, that's okay. We got the next game. And
Mhm.
I think they both really helped me. So I do agree 110% with you is that that outside influence, that outside thing that you could find for your child is huge for their development, both you know academically and but also obviously socially as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's just good to have something else to focus on, you know.
Yeah, to get your mind off of it is huge.
Mhm.
Um, so I understand, you know, we spoke again, like I mentioned earlier, about a year ago.
Mhm.
And you obviously work as an animator, but you also created a short film that everybody here that's listening can go on to YouTube and search it. Um, it's called Partially
Partially
Compensated.
compensated. Yep. Yeah, I
Okay,
made
and it's a stop motion film, right?
yeah, I made it in school. I was at the University of
Wow.
Connecticut. studying puppetry arts, which is a very niche, unique program, and it was a wonderful time there. And their program kind of focuses more on theatrical puppets and puppets for like themed entertainment, but they also allow you to pursue animation if you want. So I did my thesis film in stop motion.
Yeah, and if you all get a chance to watch it, I suggest watching it. It hits pretty deep for like a motion film, and I don't know if that's what you were trying to portray there, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do something with stop motion when I like entered that school. And I had seen this is I can't compare my film to this film, but there's one called Mary and Max, which was made a while back, and it was made in Australia, and it's about an autistic individual and his relationship with his pen pal. And after seeing that, I'd seen a lot of stop motion, obviously, because I was a fan of the art form, but seeing that made me kind of opened a world into like what can we do with this medium that's different from other mediums? Like, can we go into these deeper topics? And um, you know, we talked a lot in school about like if you're doing a marionette show, why is it a marionette show? Why is it not a live actor doing that? If it's a stop motion, like why is it a stop motion? And I think that like if you had seen what I put my character through in that film, if you'd seen like a live like 7-year-old child,
Right,
it would be a
right,
different vibe, and it would be more
right.
difficult to watch. But I think like giving it that animation puppetry form allows you to, I think hopefully allows you to like get into the character in a different way.
100%. It makes you feel for the character in a different way without that character having to show human emotion, if that makes any sense. At
Yeah.
least me being, I'm not, a play guy or nothing like that, but I'm just a viewer. But I thought that's exactly how I felt. It allowed me to kind of sit back and say, yeah, I mean, that's just how I felt during this part of that, of your show. And in this situation that your puppet was in and how I was felt in that situation. So it was really excellent. I highly suggest everyone to go ahead and watch it. I would even watch it with your child too. I think they'll find it very interesting as well. So before we get into your books, and obviously your books are basically, tell me if I'm wrong, your experiences through your character Molly, in a sense. But what made you, even with your stop motion, want to tell this dyslexic story? You could have made stories about anything, but you decided to kind of dive into dyslexia. What was, I mean, obviously your driving force could have been you, but what else kind of drove you to do that?
Yeah, so there was a few moments. So I have a more like traumatic moment from childhood where I was receiving an IEP, and I would be given 10 spelling words where everyone else was given 20. And the routine was my teacher would write the 20 words on the board. I would copy them down. Everyone would copy them down, and then I would like quietly go back to her desk, and she would just quietly circle the ones that I was responsible for, so that nobody had to know. And at this point, it was just it felt very isolating and secretive. But there was a substitute teacher that I don't think she understood the instructions, or she was like, she's a little older. I don't know.
Yeah.
So she wrote them all on the board, and she circled the ones I had to know. And she said, everybody copy these. Krista, just copy these 10. And
Uh,
the class erupted. Why does Krista only have to learn 10? What's up with that? What's going on? And the teacher was like, kind of like, oh, well, you guys didn't know? Like she said, Krista's just slower than the rest of you. That's like how she explained it.
right,
And who knows if she knew if I even was dyslexic, who knows what she knew about me. But I had a lot of questions to answer on the playground about it.
absolutely, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that's definitely in the second book in my picture book series, which I have right here. This is actually my favorite it's the second one. And this one, the character is dealing with that issue of like, do I tell my classmates, do I want to do that? And
Right,
so it's meant to help aid in those conversations. And of course, it's completely like great and fine if anybody wants to keep their difference private.
right.
That's of course okay.
Mhm.
But if those conversations do happen, and if they surprise a child, I wanted to provide a book and some resources for how to deal with
That's
that.
amazing.
Um, but to go back to your question, so I had that moment, and then also when I got retested in at the college level, my test was obviously, going into the dyslexic direction. And we
Right.
had an interview was like part of the test. And the interview, the person administering the test was asking me all these questions, but I think what she wanted to hear was that I struggle every day to spell. I can't spell this word. She wanted to hear like the mechanics of what was going on.
The
And
struggle. Right.
the struggle. And I was talking about instead of that, I was talking about the emotional impact
Mhm.
and how I felt different and isolated and all that. And I started crying,
Right.
and
Right. Of
I
course.
think after that moment, I was like, wow, I must really feel misunderstood. Like there's
Yeah.
something going on here. And so making the film, it came out of a drive to feel misunderstood because I feel like no matter how much I tell somebody how difficult it is every day to encounter words, I I didn't feel quite understood until I made the film and people saw it and I was able to sort of induce that anxiety
Yeah.
in the viewer, which is kind of
Hmm.
strange, but yeah, and then going back to the books, like after I made my film, had the film out for a couple of years and would do some events and things and talk with people, I started to realize that the biggest impact for the film is on adults who, like myself, who have like gone through it and are looking back. And I started to think and wonder what else I could do in this space and who needed it most, which I think is that elementary age dyslexic person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I applaud people like you that are putting dyslexia on the map. I'm not sure how old you are, but when I was growing up, it wasn't. I mean, my diagnosis doesn't even say dyslexia. There's no mention of it at all. But I look
Yeah.
at my WIS scores and I'm like, oh yeah, I was 100% dyslexic.
Mhm.
Um, there's a certain knowledge of dyslexia now that is different. However, it's not where it needs to be, especially in certain public schools and in parts of the world. And I think it's important that people like you that have a voice and are using your voice, whether it's writing your book or making stop motion or puppetry, or it's important because the world needs to know that dyslexia is very prevalent. It's in 1 in every 5. So whether and that's the ones that are diagnosed. The ones that are not diagnosed are slipping through the cracks. So it's probably even higher than that. And I think the more we can get it out, the more acceptance comes with it, the more understanding comes with it. But that also helps heal the child, right? And I think that was. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the point of your books is to say that it's okay if you're going through things like this. It's you're not alone is a better way for me to put it. And I think that's kind of my journey in life right now with my job is working here at the school is to tell these kids that you're not alone, right? There's the big world out there of look, we have an author, an animator on now. We've had teachers. I'm going to have movie producers on future. We're all over the place, and it's okay to be different. But you need to you kind of like you mentioned, you got to own it, right? You don't have to scream it out with your chest and let the whole world know, but you have to be okay with it. Is a better word for me to say, or for me to put words around what I'm trying to say. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's dive into your books a little bit. So your first book, tell me if I'm wrong, is that Molly's Great Discovery?
Yeah, they all work kind of they can make sense by themselves individually, but we did
Mhm.
write them in an order. Yeah, we've got Molly's Great Discovery, which is about is it backwards?
No, I see it good.
Oh, on my thing it's backwards. Yeah, it's Molly's Great Discovery is it starts off it's kind of about self-advocacy. I was thinking a lot about how actually as a child I had actually no trouble asking for help. I was actually
Mhm.
really loud and precocious and on I was looking at one of my
Good
school
for you.
records recently when I was at my parents' house and it said something like Krista's eagerness to participate is and contribute is kind of getting in the way. Like we got to work on it. Like that impulse control
Yeah,
problem,
yeah.
which I think is sometimes a part of dyslexia. I know it's
Hmm.
can be more some other issue
Hmm.
things, but anyhow, I was thinking a lot about that, and I was thinking about how that's not everybody's situation. And so Molly is in this book is having a lot of trouble just asking her teacher for help, just raising her hand and saying, I need a little extra support. And so I have this personified character named Lexi, who is Molly's dyslexia. And I, at the time too, I was thinking a lot about that relationship that I have to my own dyslexia and how it's changed over the years, and how I used to not like this thing, but now I love this thing. Um, and I began imagining conversations between myself and my dyslexia. What would I say to my dyslexia? What would it be like if we had a fight? What would it look like if we worked together? So that's kind of how the whole series
That's
started.
awesome.
And in this book, she also she gets diagnosed. She doesn't know she's dyslexic at the beginning, and she does end up getting diagnosed. So this is a great book for anyone starting the journey, I guess. And then, yeah, Molly Tells the World, which we already talked about a little bit.
Mhm.
There's a new student named Leanne, and Leanne is also dyslexic. So there's actually two dyslexic kids. And Leanne is actually very open about her dyslexia. And when she arrives, she introduces her character. She introduces her imaginary friend, Izzy, who is her dyslexia, who also looks different than Lexi,
Right.
because everybody's dyslexia can present differently. And in this book, Lexi and Molly are kind of at odds, and Lexi really wants to become visible, because the thing is, in my world, if you are open about your inside difference, it becomes visible. So like the whole class can see Izzy because Leanne has chosen to be open. And
Open.
so Lexi is kind of arguing with Molly throughout this book to make her visible. And I won't give away the end.
No, no spoilers here on this podcast.
And then the third one is a play date. So Leanne and Molly are besties. And Leanne has come over for a play date, and the play date doesn't go as planned. They go outside and play for a little while. They make a little stick village, they draw on chalk, but then it rains, and all their beautiful chalk drawings are in jeopardy or are at risk of getting ruined. And so they have to go back outside and solve some problems around the Molly's house. So
That's absolutely amazing. And as I mentioned to kind of open up this podcast, is you really touch on some important things in your book and in your book series, and I applaud you for that. And we had mentioned a little bit before is that self-advocacy piece.
yeah.
Um, and I love how your journey was different than mine in terms of the way to ask questions. I never ask questions.
You
I
really
just, oh,
quiet.
never. No, I had trouble with asking for help.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know whether that was because I was trying to, have this persona of, I don't need your help. I can do it myself. Or that I just didn't want to stick out, or I don't know what that was feeling of why I was feeling that way when I was younger. But um, the ability to ask questions, and I always tell our kids here at this school, is one of the most important tools that you can teach yourself as a dyslexic learner. If you can't ask questions, we can't read your minds as educators. We don't know when you're struggling. We don't know if you're absorbing what I'm trying to tell you. We don't know whether we need to switch up how we're teaching you. So
Mhm.
one of the things we do instill here during our transition year is that self-advocacy piece. The ability to go up to a teacher, to go up to an adult, to go up to a friend,
Mhm.
and be able to say, hey, I'm not really understanding this, or hey, do you mind slowing down a little bit? Because here at Trident Academy, we're a transition school. So you'll come with us for a couple of years, and we'll try to get you back into the school in which you came from originally. But
Mhm.
without that self advocacy piece, you know, the ability to be successful is going to be tough, because you are going to be in a classroom full of more learners. So you could be in a classroom full of 15, 20 students, and you could feel alone and you can feel different. And the teacher may lose track of you at that point. So that self-advocacy piece is huge. And I applaud your ability as a young child to be able to ask questions. I
Mhm.
think that's amazing. Especially to not really care what others thought. And I think that's
Yeah,
important.
I think I was that way, I think, until that moment when that one teacher called me out. And then I think
Right.
that's what began sort of this like psychological issue I had with hiding it, and trying to because I think at that until that point I didn't think there was anything wrong with it.
Right.
I was
Yeah,
just,
that's a good point.
you know,
You would
chugging
just
along.
trying, yeah, you were trying your best, and that's all really that mattered at that point,
Yeah.
until it became like, oh man, I'm different, right?
Yeah.
And everyone knows that I'm a little bit different. But at the same time, I like to touch again quickly on what you said in terms of you're embracing it now.
Mhm.
And I think without your dyslexia, you wouldn't be who you are. I mean, your skill is in illustrating, is in storytelling, is in all of that. And I think without that dyslexic piece of creativity, which you obviously have, I don't think you'd be in the position that you're in. Am I wrong by saying that?
No, absolutely not. I really attribute a lot to my dyslexic strengths for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And that goes to your second book, the difference that dyslexia could present in different people.
Hmm.
You have that creativity and I have I like to say the drive motive behind myself in
Did you?
terms of never giving up.
Yeah, I'll show you one illustration that I really love from the third book, and it's when Leanne is over at Molly's house, and I show that these little spot illustrations are representative of each child. So like Leanne's strengths are in science, and she's really interested in nature and space and bugs, and it comes up later, her knowledge, what she brings to the table. And then Molly is more sort of like me, she's interested in her picture books, and she likes
Uh-huh.
art and creating and drawing. So yeah, I think it's important to show that it's not a one size fits all thing.
Absolutely. And to know your strengths, right? And to embrace your strengths is two different things, in my opinion. You can know your strength, right? And you could not continue to work on your strength. That's one thing I always tell our kids, man, you're really good at this. Why don't we keep getting better? Because
Yeah.
there's no reason to put that on the back burner just because you're struggling to spell and just because you're struggling to read. I'm a big advocate of pushing our kids in the direction of their strengths while, of course, working on your weaknesses. Because if you push your strengths to the back burner, right, those strengths tend to start to fade a little bit, and
Yeah.
you don't grow in what you should be growing in. And I think a lot of times when we push our kids too far and we're doing too many tutor sessions and we're bringing them to school and then they go home and they have tutor sessions for 4 to 6 hours and they get worn out, and but then they also don't have time to work on those strengths. And I think those are so, so, so important is to find time to work on your strengths. So that's a really, really great point that you made there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So obviously, I know you're a busy, busy person, and we don't have all day. And I
Mhm.
wish we did, because I love talking to you, and this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Um, but the same question that I ask all of my guests on my show, um, if you could go back and tell your younger self something, anything, during a time where I guess during that time where the teacher called you out,
Mhm.
what would you if you well, this is a great point. If you were one of your characters in the book that has an imaginary friend, what would your
Mhm.
imaginary friend tell you during your most difficult time?
Oh, I think that she would say just to keep going. I
Mhm.
think that's just keep going. Um, it's easy to sit and dwell in some sad feelings and I think I would also have told myself not to worry too much about school. I
Right,
guess
right.
once, I think I had an amazing time when I got to college and I got to study things I was interested in, not just in
Yeah.
my course, my like course, whatever in my major, but
Mhm.
also outside of my major, extracurricular things that I just was interested in. And I think sometimes kids who have to sit there and they have to do social studies and they have to do English and they have to do math, it's like it's hard to picture a world outside of that,
Mhm.
and look to the
Yeah.
future.
Yep.
So I would
Yeah,
have told.
and it's a great point too, because I was talking with my first guest, Josh Clark, in terms of how like college was a time where we grew the most academically. And the exact point that you just made came up on that episode as well, is that we got to study and we got to do what we enjoyed. We
Mhm.
weren't forced to take, I mean, I went to a liberal arts school, so I was a history major. And I love studying history and I
Mhm.
love all about it. And I had to take a math course, but because it was a liberal arts school, I had to take a history of math course.
Uh-huh.
So that was a way for me to say, oh, wow, I'm enjoying my math class. It's not algebra, it's not geometry, it's history of
Yeah.
math. But it was a time where I kind of enjoyed going to school. And it was probably the only time I enjoyed going to school was because I was learning what I was interested in.
Yeah.
And
And
that's a really good point.
some of my best classes from that time that stick out the most were ones that I took as substitutes because I wasn't able to take Spanish, or I wasn't able to take a foreign
Right.
language with with my disability. So yeah, some of those classes that I would have never ended up in otherwise ended up being very interesting.
Yeah, and it's kind of like where I found the love of learning because I found learning interesting for once.
Yeah.
But and another point that I do want to touch on, and it was another awesome point, is you don't have to love school, right?
Mm,
And but you
mm,
have to try, is what I always tell my kids. You have to be willing to get back up when you're knocked down. And it may be the hardest thing you do, but the feeling that you get when you get back up is something that is I can't explain to those that are not dyslexic.
uh-huh.
It's those that have never struggled in school don't understand that feeling of, man, I'm never going to learn this. This is
Yeah.
impossible. But then you keep trying and keep it, and then you get it. It's like I'm capable of doing anything. So it's a good point to know that you don't really have to love school, and that's not really my idea of school. As long as you enjoy the people that you're with, as
Mhm.
long as that you're trying, and as long as that you have trust with those that are teaching you, the love of school will come. Just
Mhm.
keep going is kind of what I like to tell the kids that are like, I'm not enjoying learning
Yeah.
yet. So all really, really good points. And again, I appreciate people like you that are using your talents, your dyslexic strengths, but also helping our community as a whole and getting the story out there that you're not alone. And really anything is possible. So you are a very positive story that I'm going to be thrilled to share with the rest of our students here. And if you would like, or if I could ask, and you would enjoy, I would love to have you come and speak to our kids and maybe read one of your books to them.
Yeah.
I think they would get a kick out of that.
I would love that. I'm just starting to do school visits around this. I've done school visits with my film before, if that's what you're talking about. And
Yeah,
actually
absolutely.
next week I'll be in Dallas for a full week and I'm doing some school visits
Oh, that's
there.
amazing.
But I wanted to say one more thing because
Yeah, please.
I was thinking about your question about what would I tell myself a little bit, or
Yeah,
something you said made me think of this. And I think the best thing all of us could have said to ourselves was prove them wrong. You
yeah.
know, I think we deal with a lot of, I think dyslexic kids are very emotionally intelligent. I think we can tell when we're disappointing somebody or when we,
Absolutely.
or what kind of judgment they might have about us,
Yeah.
and I think prove them wrong.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because I had a teacher training when we got back from Christmas break, and the point of the training was our kids understand what you're feeling without you opening your mouth. Our
Yeah.
kids are they can just walk into a room and they know whether it's you're having a bad day as a teacher, or they know whether it's going to be a tough class. They know they can read you better than you could read yourself. And just like you had mentioned, I think that's a learned trait from dyslexics because you kind of prepare yourself for what's to come before it actually comes.
Yeah.
And it's such a skill, and I laugh because that was the point of the whole training, is to kind of acknowledge your body language, acknowledge your tone of voice, because our students are reading all of it.
Mhm.
Dyslexics can pick up on that just like that. So that's it's funny that you brought that up. And then obviously the prove them wrong thing was another quote that I used in episode 1 of this podcast.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, it's kind of my motto is I to tell the story quickly again is I come from a big Italian household from northern New Jersey, and I was always the kid that was going to live with mom. I was always the kid that wasn't going to go to college because of my learning differences, and I was always a clown. I was making jokes at school because that was my way of getting out of it. But my
Mhm.
motto became prove them wrong. Why do I have to be the one that's going to be living in my mom's house my entire life, or that's not going to go to college? So my motto in life is prove them wrong, and I did. I was the first one in my family to graduate college, and
Wow.
all this other stuff. But um, the prove it wrong piece is an aspect of my life that I use for everything. And you're absolutely right. I think if we can instill that drive, that motivation to prove those that doubt us wrong, you're unstoppable at that point. So I appreciate you bringing that up too. Before I go, I just want to remind everybody, before we go, I just want to remind everybody to please go ahead and look at the description. You can order Krista's books right from that link that I'm going to put on there. And I'm really looking forward to having you visit our school. So we'll be in contact about that. I think our kids are going to absolutely love it, and I'm going to enjoy getting their book signed by you. And I do applaud that you are willing to go out there to Dallas and to all over the country to share this story with those that need to hear it. So thank you for everything you do for this community.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So as always, everybody out there, please make sure you're subscribing and following. It's really important, and it has nothing to do with I want more followers and I want more subscribers. It has a lot to do with the more we get, the more this reaches people's streams randomly. You don't know who's out there that needs to hear these stories, that needs that motivation and encouragement to, for lack of a better word, prove people wrong. So, Krista, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good
All right,
day.
bye. I will see everybody for episode 4, where I will have another author on as well, and we are super excited to have. Actually, it's an author mother and an illustrator son who is the dyslexic one is the son. So we're super excited to have them on. But Krista, thank you so much. Stay safe, and I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you. Bye.